Imagine a farmer at the edge of this field. Beside her are two advisors looking at the same wheat, interpreting it through two conflicting filters. The first advisor is an economist. She studies the map. She asks systemic questions. If the harvest is large and prices drop, what happens to national income? How do we calculate the welfare of the consumer against the needs of the producer? The second advisor is a commerce professional. He deals with the territory. He asks, who is the buyer? How will we store the grain? And can we process it into flour to increase our margins? Both disciplines were born from the same event, agricultural surplus. When societies finally produced more than they needed, trade was born. Over time, economics became the analytical search for principles, and commerce the operational search for opportunities. The danger occurs when we mistake the economist's analytical map for the merchant's operational territory. We build policies for theory, while the reality on the ground pulls in the opposite direction. This tension between logic and execution determines whether a civilization builds lasting prosperity or collapses under its own complexity. This is the logic of the invisible hand. The theory suggests that millions of self-interested decisions will coordinate through price signals, moving resources to where they are most valued, without central direction. However, real humans do not act like rational nodes in a simulation. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman demonstrated that we are driven by loss aversion. We generally value avoiding a loss twice as much as achieving an equivalent gain. Commercial strategy exploits this. Retailers use artificial scarcity and price anchoring to trigger these instincts, bypassing rational behavior entirely. In the digital era, this gap widens. Without replication costs, classical competition models fail. Network effects create a where-take-all dynamic, consolidating power into a single node. Amazon succeeded because its commercial execution, building a massive logistics moat and customer lock-in, overrode the theoretical model of price efficiency. The invisible hand often finds itself guided by a visible marketplace that doesn't follow the textbook. History shows a consistent pattern. Commerce acts, and economics explains the action afterward. Centuries before any economic theory was formalized, merchants on the Silk Road had already solved global pricing and supply chain problems across 3 continents. Even radical theories like those of Karl Marx were direct responses to industrial conditions that were already a daily reality for millions. By the mid-1800s, massive factories and physical capital had already reshaped society. The theory was just arriving to interpret the change. John Maynard Keynes only developed his tools for demand management after the Great Depression had already crippled the global financial system. To understand where the world is going, you must look at where commerce is experimenting today, because theory is usually looking in the rearview mirror. Milton Friedman famously argued that the business of business is strictly business, that a corporation's only duty is to maximize returns for its owners. The opposing view argues that growth is meaningless unless it improves broad measures of human life, health, security, and the environment. This friction is caused by externalities, costs that a transaction pushes onto third parties. When a company pollutes to lower its production costs, it is essentially offloading a social expense to inflate its private profit. In pharmaceuticals, research costs billions, which demands high returns to sustain. But those returns create prices that block access to life-saving drugs. This creates a loop where a medical breakthrough exists, but the market cannot move it to the people who need it. Because the price mechanism ignores the social value of a life saved, the market fails to distribute resources efficiently. One solution is shared value, the idea that companies can gain a competitive advantage specifically by solving social problems, making profit a byproduct of progress. We see this transition in India. Under a 1991 crisis, Manmohan Singh removed decades of licensing restrictions, forcing the nation toward open market competition. That shift paved the way for digital public infrastructure. By building open public networks for identity and payments, the government created a foundation for private innovators. These public rails lower the barriers to entry, allowing thousands of private startups to compete on a scale that would be impossible for any single company to build alone. India's success in financial inclusion shows that growth and equity reinforce each other when the system is built to align them. It is vital to distinguish between invention and innovation. Invention creates potential in a lab, but innovation is the act of getting the market to adopt an idea and realize its economic value. Artificial intelligence is emerging as a general-purpose engine, capable of accelerating discovery and optimization across every sector of the economy simultaneously. This shift marks a collision between rapid gains in efficiency and the risk of displacing cognitive labor at scale. When it works, commerce acts as a laboratory. Adoption creates revenue, revenue drives productivity, and that surplus funds the next wave of infrastructure. But we must remember that the market is a mechanism, not a morality. It produces exactly what the rules allow it to produce. True prosperity requires the integration of three players: the economist's discipline, the merchant's realism, and the policymaker's vision. The future belongs to the societies that design markets where commercial success and human well-being are the same thing.